Well, welcome to the Spring 2022 David M. Rubenstein Distinguished Lecture. My name is Corey Krupp, and I'm the Associate Dean of Academic Programs at the Sanford School of Public Policy at Duke. And today I'm representing Sanford. Um, Unfortunately, our Dean, Judith Kelly, couldn't be with us. She's recovering from a bike accident. So we wish her a very speedy recovery. If you are here in person or online, we are absolutely thrilled to have you here for this very special event. This is one of our many highlights of our 50th anniversary celebration of 50 years of public policy at Duke. You can find out more information about the history of our public policy school and our top ranked academic programs online at sanford.duke.edu. We are a resource for you. We are thrilled to host a conversation today with alumni and friends of our Sanford School of Public Policy on the future of public service and our democracy. The Sanford School of Public Policy wants to make the world a better place for all. And public policy is essential to help solve some of the world's greatest challenges. One of our ambitions in the Sanford School is to inspire students to lead lives of public service and civic engagement. And today, we will learn more about how that is possible. So now I would like to introduce the president of Duke University, Vincent Price, who will introduce our speakers for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Corey, and good evening, everyone. On behalf of the entire Duke community, I am delighted to welcome you to the David M. Rubenstein Distinguished Lecture featuring Michael Sorrell, Judy Woodruff, and David Gergen. And let me begin by saying that our thoughts are with Dean Kelly. We wish her the best for a speedy recovery. This event is so meaningful to her, and this celebration of public policy at Duke, of course, so significant to her, and we thank her for her leadership. The Rubenstein Lecture Series was created through the generosity of David Rubenstein, Trinity Class of 1970, with a mission of bringing the foremost voices in American public policy to Duke. Many of you know David as the co-founder and co-chairman of the Carlyle Group, chairman of the boards of the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the Economic Club of Washington, and trustee, director, and valued supporter of innumerable critical cultural institutions in our nation. David is also chair emeritus of the Duke University Board of Trustees and a trusted friend and advisor. So David, we're so grateful for all that you've done for Duke and to advance this kind of dialogue on our campus. This is the 50th anniversary of public policy at Duke, an important milestone for us. At a university that has seen a pioneering institute transformed into one of the leading schools of public policy in the nation. And we're proud of the ways that initiatives like the Rubenstein Lecture have provided Duke with these kinds of opportunities, propelled the university and the Sanford School to the forefront of social science and public policy research, advancing a legacy that dates back to the great Terry Sanford. So thank you all for being with us here, and thank you for helping us lead the way. Tonight, it seems particularly fitting that we are gathered for the Rubenstein Distinguished Lecture Series, as our three guests are three of the most distinguished voices in public life. Michael Sorrell, a double Dookie, is president of Paul Quinn College, an historically black college in Dallas, Texas. During his 13-year tenure, he has transformed the institution and provided real leadership in higher education, seeking to make college more accessible and to foster a new and exciting model for urban higher education. A past Duke Founders Day speaker, Dr. Sorrell has won numerous awards for his efforts, including the Duke Distinguished Alumni Award, and he is the only three-time recipient of the HBCU Male President of the Year Award. He also serves on the University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Education Board of Advisors and the Duke University School of Law Board of Visitors. Judy Woodruff is the anchor and managing editor of the PBS NewsHour and has covered politics for 5 decades at NBC, CNN, and PBS. She has worked as a White House correspondent at NBC News, chief Washington correspondent at PBS, and as anchor of Inside Politics at CNN. She was also the anchor of the PBS documentary series Frontline with Judy Woodruff, the founding co-chair of the International Women's Media Foundation, an organization dedicated to promoting women in journalism and communications worldwide. She is a recipient of the Radcliffe Medal and the Duke Distinguished Alumni Award. Judy is trustee emerita of the Duke University Board of Trustees and currently serves as a trustee of the Duke Endowment. David Gergen is a former White House advisor to 4 US presidents. A native of Durham, where his father served as a longtime faculty member here at Duke, he is also a Duke parent. He currently serves as a professor of public service and the founding director of the Center for Public Leadership at the Harvard Kennedy School. As a senior political analyst for CNN, he has twice been a member of election coverage teams that have won Peabody Awards, and he has contributed to 2 Emmy Award-winning political analysis teams. He is a trustee emeritus of both Duke and Yale universities, and he currently serves on the boards of the Mission Continues, the Trilateral Commission, and Elon University's School of Law. So, Michael, I will turn the program over to you to start this discussion, and as I do so, please join me in welcoming Michael Sorrell, Judy Woodruff, and David Gergen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Price. It's always wonderful to be here and to see you. I would like to just take a brief moment to say to David, for the first time in history, a Paul Quinn alum has gone to work with the Carlyle Group. And I recognize that he didn't interview her, right? But what that has meant to her and her family and to our institution cannot be understated. So with the hopes of many more of my students being hired, I just want to recognize and say thank you. I also want to just say to Udith how sorry we are that she is not here. She has worked tirelessly to coordinate all of this, and to throw a party that you don't get to attend is tough. But we are praying for you, Udith, and we will try to make sure we make you proud. So with that, I will turn to our distinguished panel. And first, let me just say how thrilled I am to be here with you. I've watched both of you on TV for many, many years.
Him a lot longer than me.
Absolutely, absolutely, right. So it is a real joy to be here. And I thought that I would just start out with this softball question. Things are a little difficult in our country right now. Democracy, depending upon who you believe, is under real attack. And in thinking about that, and given you all's incredible standing and the experiences that you've had, how exactly did we get here? And is this moment an outlier?
Well, I will start. First of all, it's a thrill for me to be back at Duke and to be part of this wonderful celebration of the Sanford School. It's great to be here with you and with David, and like you, I'm so sorry Judith is not here, and wish her healing as fast as possible. How did we get here? It's such a perfect question, and it's a long and complicated answer. But I mean, for me, I mean, there are any number of junctures that you can look at. I look at, honestly, back in the decade of the 90s, after the election of Bill Clinton, when I think the country was there was a lot of reaction, I remember, on the part of the Republican Party to this upstart young governor from Arkansas who had dared to defeat an incumbent Republican president. A lot of that's very understandable. Both sides, every side is resentful when their team loses in an election. But I think what I began to see in that year, and not putting more blame on one political party or another at that point, was a resentment that that began to override even the usual partisanship. You're used to having Republicans and Democrats disagree with each other, but there was an edge to it that I saw that started back then. And then fast forward, and by the way, there were that was the period when we had the what we call the Gingrich Revolution. The Newt Gingrich came along with a contract for America. We want to do these things. We're not going to do these other things. But then you had, of course, so that's the 90s. In 2000, you had the divided election, which clearly split the country again. Al Gore, George W. Bush, the Supreme Court decided the election. Then you had another party very, very unhappy about the results, feeling they'd been cheated to an extent. And then along comes, so that colors, I think, American politics for a long time. And you have, understandably, the growth of the conservative movement, and we could spend a long time talking about that. That goes back a number of decades. I think, that it really came to me into full flower in the 80s and 90s, certainly the 80s under Ronald Reagan, but then moving on into the 00s, and at the risk of just, of completely collapsing what I think was a complicated stream of different strands of different political developments. I think we got to a point in the 2010s, in the 2000s with the election of Obama. We know how divided the country was then, and then of course he leaves office in Donald Trump in 2016. And there I think we've just seen the full fruition of not just partisanship, but polarization, where one side in this country not just disagrees with the other side, they look down on them. They think, the argument is you're not a good American if you don't agree with me. And we've sunk to a low that I've never seen before in covering American politics. And so I looked to David Gergen to explain how we got here.
There's no one answer. You're right about that. And first of all, it's great to be home. And I appreciate the opportunity to come here. I took a walk with our son on the campus a couple of nights ago. I'm just absolutely stunned at what's happened here. When I was growing up here as a kid, this was a regional school. It was, it had some promise, but it was very, very southern. And then by the time I hit my 20s or so, we became a national school. And now we're global. And you can just see it in every building you see, how we're tied into so many different aspects of what's going on in the world. I think a lot of the solution to the problem we're facing comes from places like this. And we can get back to that, but I'd like to make that point. I'd like to introduce Judy spoke wonderfully about this. I'd like to introduce the notion of generations and what the difference generations make. And perhaps I'm simplifying too much, I know, but when I came to Washington, below these many years ago, the town was run by the World War II generation. That was the generation that started with John Kennedy and ran through George H.W. Bush. And we had 7 presidents during that run. Every single one of those presidents wore a military uniform. Now, they weren't all doing difficult things. I mean, George W., he spent, defending the great state of Texas from the state of Oklahoma is, is not exactly considered that hard. But nonetheless, those 7 presidents weren't perfect. They gave us Vietnam, and they gave us Watergate. And both things are unforgivable in many ways. But they also they kept the country together. We remained a pretty united people. We had our disagreements, but we remained united. And our leaders, it was the quality of the leaders. The leaders were by and large much better than what we've had since. And these people came out. I think the military experience really dramatically molded many of those leaders, and they were also, they found that there was a ready audience out there for that kind of leadership. You look at an Eisenhower, and it was just in front of this, but look at the 50s. Over 8 years, he had on average a 65% approval rating. And we have a hard time hitting 50 now. But he was over that period of time, and the leaders that came after John Kennedy really excited us. He excited the older generation. that's here. He was a major, major figure in doing that. But I think if you look over the totality of it, those leaders were among the best we've had, and they left behind a country that was the strongest since the days of Rome, economically, militarily, culturally, by almost every measure. And when did the change come? It came in the early 90s when the World War II generation passed from the stage in terms of running the country, and we brought in the baby boomers. And that was the 90s. And we've had 5 presidents. Not one has worn a military uniform. They're a different breed of people. They have been. I think that in general, I'm trying to come to grips with this in a book I've been working on. And as a general proposition, I think that the baby boom population has been a disappointment. There have been some terrific individuals who are in the baby boom population. We shouldn't dismiss them totally out of hand, but it's not. You can't escape the fact that what they're leaving behind is not what the Second World War generation left behind. I mean, they're leaving behind a country that is, we're at each other's throats. The economy isn't working the way it should. We have, and we're on the edge. I think too close to the edge of becoming a more authoritarian country. And that is I think there is real danger out there. If it can come to Europe, if we can see what's happening in France, it may take, if it happens on the next couple of weeks, we're all going to be looking at each other and said, it could come to America. It's hard to believe, but that is true. What's going on in Hungary? The edge toward authoritarianism is coming because there's been a loss of faith and trust in our leaders. And we need, more than anything else, we need to pass the torch. We need a new generation to come in and have a fresh start, fresh vision, fresh sort of a sense of, they can do it, sense of confidence. I think right now our leaders are sort of exhausted. They can't find answers, and I don't think they're capable of finding long-term answers. And that's why I think that's why it's so important for Duke and other schools like this to work on preparing the leaders of the future. Because we're going to be in for a tough, long road. I describe myself as a short-term pessimist, but a long-term optimist. I'm more hopeful about the future than I am about the next few years. I think we got a lot of things going for us, but I don't think we can skip past this question of how good is your leadership? Do they have a moral purpose? Do they have the kind of energy? Are they willing to take the hits? Are they willing to do the other things that are tough in leadership? And if they are, I think we can get back on track. But I think if we just sort of sit here complacently, what will be, will be, we can't deal with this, we're going to just turn off TV and go home, then I think we get more of the same. And that means more of a slide. So there are big questions ahead.
David, I listened to that explanation, and I want to add a bit of a twist to it, right, from the way that I see it.
Yeah.
So
I welcome that.
I look at what happened at what I would term the result of the Barack Obama presidency. The response that a significant chunk of the country made when greeted with the idea that we might evolve, right? And we might live up to the promise of the nation. And I look back at the response that the country made during Reconstruction after the Civil War. And the idea that you have a Donald Trump after you have a Barack Obama seems to be a response to the very worst in us, right? You take a man who is incredibly well educated, incredibly charismatic, to someone who I don't think we can call him well educated, but I think you can point to having sort of a negative charisma. You look at the Tea Party, you look at all these things that were in response. And so when we talk about people being exhausted, are we exhausted because we had a moment where we believed we might have turned the corner, and then all of a sudden that's been slammed shut in a way that, like, I think about how my students responded to the Trump election, right? And 25% of my students are Latino. And, we're in Texas. And the idea that the country turned its back on them had students, like literally we had to call a town hall meeting and try to provide comfort. And I saw terror in the eyes of our students. And then for many folks to come to grips with the fact that there were people who wanted them to feel that terror. And so, how then do we ask our young people to clean up a mess that wasn't of their making, that has in many ways betrayed their hope? And I don't know if it's fair that we ask. I mean, we look at climate change, we look at all of this, and how do we get hope back?
I think he needs to
Okay.
respond.
Uh,
I think you were,
well,
I think you were addressing that to him.
yeah, look, I don't think there's any question that we have to open the door of opportunity more widely for people of color, for women, and for others. We just put it on the table. We have a big job to do in ensuring that people of all backgrounds and all religions, all genders, have an equal shot, and that we're not succeeding at that. I was this last week. I went to participate in a conversation with Ken Frazier and Ken Chenault, two the best CEOs in the country in recent years, two black CEOs. I didn't know this. Ken Frazier pointed it out. The number of black CEOs of major corporations has been cut in half over the last 10 years or so. We're going backwards, not forwards. And so clearly we have to deal with that. But you know something, Michael? I think every generation that has faced existential threats has actually had some things that they were unfair in the system. And we still came through it. We got through it. But it was because we were committed to something larger. And we do have to build a country in which blacks feel it's their home too. And the Hispanics feel like it's their home. It's the only way we're going to succeed at it. But I think if we just sort of don't ask, it's much worse. We don't ask for their help. But they're going to need, if we want to ask them for help, they're going to need a fair deal as part of that bargain. They're going to have a better set of opportunities and be more widely accepted. And I think it's unacceptable to continue on the current path.
Judy, the question to you, how do we get hope back?
Well, clearly the
Dealing with little issues here, just,
Okay. How did we get here and how do we get it? Clearly the younger generation is going to be part of finding our way through this. I mean, it's easy. I mean, I've heard myself say our generation is leaving a big mess for the next generation. It isn't quite that simple, but there's no question they are confronting some really tough challenges around everything from the environment to our political division to our education system in this country, global questions, the authoritarianism that David discussed. The problems don't get much bigger than what we're asking this next generation to look at. How do we come through it? Frankly, I think it's going to take people of goodwill who just don't give up, who keep working at it. I know as journalists, we're under a lot of scrutiny right now. The trust in journalism has plummeted since under the Trump era, where we were being called fake news, enemies of the American people. I mean, whenever I'm asked by young journalists, how do we keep going? The answer is just keep looking for the facts, keep looking for the truth, just keep looking, and that's our job, to keep reporting. And in many ways, I think that's our job as American citizens, not to get distracted by, yes, there's a lot of really ugly stuff going on right now. There's a lot of ugly stuff. We've got a lot of issues to deal with. But if those of us in our, whether you're a teacher, you're in education, whether you're a journalist, whether you are a lawyer, or whether you have a blue collar job and you're helping hold a community together, keep doing the job that you do. Keep looking for facts. I mean, I can't get away from that imperative. I think we have to keep focused on and working toward a period again when we rely on facts, on real information. Because without it, I don't know how our democracy stays strong. We can't be allowed to slide off into what we're watching, certainly not, the Russia, the China, where things are just made up and people accept it. We can't have that happen. It's already happened to a degree in this country, and we can't continue.
Social media.
Go
Go ahead, Dale.
yeah, I just wanted to add to this. You know, we need to find heroes again. As it occurred to you the last few weeks, watching what's going on in Ukraine, where are our Zelenskys? Where do we have the people like that who can provide the leadership? That's holding together because of the quality of Zelensky. And it's amazing. I mean, he's amazingly good. But he talks to the people every night. He goes on television to give a little talk to people, and he's keeping. He's being more transparent. He's making sure people know what's going on. He's practicing a kind of leadership we haven't seen in a while, and it keeps the trust up. So I don't know the answer to it. I do believe that there are a lot of young people, black young people, that I think are really very promising. I find that black women right now basically occupy the high ground in moral leadership.
Well, I would tell you that's always been the case, but
I think that, yeah. Well, that's good. That's good. But there are all sorts of, the Black Lives Matter now was started by a bunch of black women. The Me Too movement was started by that. There are a lot of folks out there right now you can look to, and when we're looking for our heroes, when we're looking for our Martin Luther King, there are people out there now who bring that to the table. There are people 15, 16, look, the Malalas of the world, or the Greta Thunbergs of the world. They're amazing things they were doing when they're before 20 years old.
well, but the thing about that though is, I don't know if in today's social dynamic with social media
Yeah.
that we could have heroes that way again.
You don't think so? That's discouraging.
Well, because every aspect of their lives is under the microscope.
That's true.
And we've robbed people of the ability to be human.
Yeah. I agree with that
I
totally.
mean, so I want to go back to this point with Zelensky, because I actually am really concerned about the West response to Russia in this. Do you think that the West response has been forceful enough?
The answer to that is no, but I think it's getting better by the day. Wes Clark was on a couple of days ago, and he was extremely frustrated how slowly we're moving. So, yeah, we're keeping planes out of the sky, but we're just not. They need different sets of weapons. They need defense weapons and that sort of thing. But in the last 2 days, it's picked up again. I mean, Biden has really come forward and is tooling it up. So, my sense of I happen to feel I have a very strong affection for Joe Biden. I thought he was the right man. I thought he was an empathic fellow. I think he's become, on this issue and some others, he's become too much the follower, not the leader. So he sort of, when people put pressure on him, he starts to move. And I think that, frankly, we could have started a lot earlier with the quality of weapons. I personally thought it was a mistake to promise ahead of time we were never going to use our own forces. And there's one other thing. You just don't, as president, you don't want to give up that option. Right. You may want to come back to it. But the other thing that I worry we've done with other countries, and this happened when Kennedy was president. They had the Cuban Missile Crisis. Llewellyn came in, who was an advisor, came in and said, "Whatever you do, don't put Khrushchev in a corner, because if he's in a corner, it's going to be like a snake. He's going to lash out. It's going to be hard to control." I think we cornered Putin so much, he has nothing to lose by fighting on to his own end, because if he gets out, he's going to get killed. I mean, he's been basically told, "You're finished." I'm not sure it was a good idea. I think the thing to do is get this war over with and then figure out some of the missing parts. But I don't know. That's backseat driving.
Yeah, I would just say I think all those arguments, are being made. I would just also point out that the Ukrainians are holding on. The Russians have been held back. They've had one defeat after another. Yes, they've killed. Every one death is too many, but they've killed a lot of Ukrainians. There's a huge threat right now in the east, but they have been held off. The West has supplied enormous amounts of weapons, most of which are invisible. We can't see them, but it's the reason they are able to shoot down and destroy tanks and all the rest of it. So I think it's too early to judge, the outcome. We'll see. I mean, yes, we deplore every single death, and we wish the war had never happened. We wish they defeated the Russians on day one, but the Russians didn't accomplish what they set out to do. We'll see what happens from here on. But this right now, the Ukrainians are holding on.
They are. They are. Well, let's lighten it up a little bit.
Good.
So, what would you tell your 25-year-old selves?
About there are a lot of things to talk to my 25-year-old about the world.
About the world, about life, about how to make a mark in this life.
Some of this is going to sound like everything you've heard before, but figure out what your passion is. Where do you think you can make a difference? Find the people you respect, smart people around you, talk to them, get advice from them, and figure out for yourself what your lane is going to be. And look, if you change your mind 5 years from now or 10 years from now and you realize you want to do something else, that's okay. You don't have to have it all figured out at age 25. But go where you believe, well, first of all, what excites you, and then go where you think you can make a difference. And be humble about it. Don't go into it thinking you have all the answers. I mean, this is something, I talk to journalists about a lot all the time. I think, we talk about where we are in 2022. I think a lot of the media has gotten kind of in its own little corner in parts of the country, and we need to be much more open to listening to Americans than we are. I would say to any 25-year-old, be in listening mode. Have conversations with people. Be open to new information. Don't think you've got it all figured out from day one.
I think Judy got it absolutely nail on the head with the notion about passion and being part of the passions of your time. I think that's where people, if you gravitate to where the action is, where the change is coming, where you can make a difference, you can really have a very exciting life. It was interesting that I took a group of students, about I think 20 students, in when then Senator Barack Obama was new to the office, and one of the students put to Obama exactly your question: how do I make an impact, and so forth. And Obama's answer was, you cannot plan out your jobs. You can't foresee what jobs are coming. What you can do is follow your passions. If you follow your passions, the jobs will come to you. You don't have to worry about it. If you're good, you're successful, the jobs will come to you, and that's how you make it in life. But you also got to be persevering. This change is not easy. I mean, change, we've learned all the way back to Machiavelli, comes slowly. You got to persevere, and you have to sacrifice a lot. But I was telling the class earlier today, when we talked about this, that you've got to be listening, and you've got to be prepared to live a life of idealism, knowing that you're going to get hit hard. But remember, when Mother Teresa was dying, someone pressed her, well, why do you choose to live among people who are so poor, so impoverished, so hopeless? Why did you make that choice? And she said, because I wanted a hard life. I wanted a hard life. There's something in that all of us could remember about it. It is hard, but it's possible. I mean, humankind has made real strides over the centuries. It's taken a long time, and some people have been left out who need to be in. But I do think that fundamental having some hope about things is also important. I do think you've got to leave your audience with some sense of hope.
I agree with that. So let's turn the question around a little bit. Okay. You all have had these extraordinary lives, right? Accomplished things that people who dream of service would just hope to accomplish. But everyone has something that they wish they had done differently. Right? What do you wish you had done differently?
Differently?
I just don't think about that. I can't. I mean, I try to stay focused on the future. I try to learn from my mistakes, learn from the things that I screwed up, and just keep going. And I think, I mean, for me, that's the only thing that works. I can't spend time thinking about what I should have done, could have done, what I regret.
Never.
Uh,
You've never thought about what you wish you had done differently. I'm
and
finding this a little hard to
you
believe.
think I'm going to tell these people? Come on. David will tell us what he.
Uh, I spent too much time climbing a slippery pole and wish I spent more time with my kids. And it's one of the things you lose. It's one of the regrets. And I've been trying to make it up for the last 20 years, but I still haven't succeeded.
I wish I'd studied harder. I do. I wish I'd studied harder.
That is the perfect answer for an academic environment. All right, I'll stop with the hard questions, right? One of the things that we're dealing with in Texas is this idea of rewriting history, because history is uncomfortable. And I know we've talked a lot about the passions of the day and, the need to pursue truth and pushing back against these things. But it has been, I want to tell a bit of a story about one of my students who, I teach a class on problem solving. And we were talking about this issue. And the student really pushed aggressively on the idea that what do you do with people who are so desperate to keep truth out of the public discourse? How do you wage war against those individuals? Full disclosure, I had no answer. So this is my chance to get an answer and go back and look smart, right? How do you push back against people who are so deeply invested in the truth not seeing the light of day?
Michael, I'm going to go back to, I think, something I touched on a little bit earlier, a few minutes ago, and that is that we all just have to keep, those of us who care about this, just keep focused on getting to the facts, getting to real information, finding a way to get that information out there. It's not easy. It's not going to happen overnight. The forces of disinformation, misinformation, lying are out there, and they are powerful right now. I mean, look what's going on in our country, the big lie about the election, and so much more. And look, again, we're surrounded in the rest of the world by governments that lie to their own people, and they succeed at it. So this is not easy. But I mean, the last thing I would say is give up. We have to keep focusing on what's real, what's truthful. Give me the evidence. I was going to say, I can't believe I'm saying that. Think like a lawyer.
As a recovering attorney, I'm concerned about this.
Where's the evidence? Having said that, it's not easy. I mean, because people are looking at the same set of facts, whether it's the economy or whether it's some of the really tough cultural issues that we're arguing about right now, and people have completely different takes on them. So, but I just think we can't give up. We have to keep at it. We have to keep caring about the truth and calling it out when something isn't true, isn't factual. We need to call it out.
Yeah. I think among other things, we ought to salute PBS. Because PBS has become one of the places.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
You all have really kept for year after year. You've been steady about we're going to give you the facts, and you haven't been caught up in the partisanship. You haven't been caught up in politicization, and it's something. There are very few institutions in our country anymore that can say that, and so it is quite special. And it's remarkable how global this problem has become. I agree with Michael. I don't know what the answer is, but I was quite stunned to read this, and I'm sure you know that in the last few days there was a survey in Russia about Putin and his approval rating, he was up to 73% approval. Think of that and what that means and how that changes the political dynamic. If he was at 23% approval, the war would be over. But so it's really important to get this right. But there is a retreat, and I think there is a danger of a retreat on university campuses. And we need to be very thoughtful about what's going on university campuses right now. There's some things that are very healthy, and there's some things less so.
Well, I think that's the perfect segue into answering questions from our audience. We have an amazing group here, and we want to give people a chance to ask questions. So,
Well, Judy and David, for your commitment, for your public service, and for your time with us tonight to talk about public service, democracy, and the future of the Sanford School of Public Policy. Join me in thanking them, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well done.